So how does this all fit into the bigger picture as bankruptcy plays out? Plus, there is a hold this week on the water shutoffs, but the debate is far from over. We'll pick up there with our MiWeek contributors, Nolan Finley from the Detroit News. Stephen Henderson is off this week, and sitting in is Detroit Free Press columnist Nancy Kaffer. It's always good to see you, Nance. Thanks for coming back from MiWeek.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And holding down the chair while Stephen's out. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in a little bit. We talked a little nuts and bolts bankruptcy with Sandra, but looking at the bigger picture, because I feel, Nolan, that people are starting to look almost beyond the court activity that's going to be happening in August and how the city is now going to move on from here in September.
It's a good time to start looking past, because it does seem as if the bankruptcy is going to wrap up on the time frame that Kevin Orr and the governor laid out, but there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, the bankruptcy didn't solve all our problems, or it's not going to solve all our problems. A lot of things that were identified on the to-do list when the bankruptcy started are still there at the end. Just a couple examples. City Airport, we still didn't find a solution for that. The city charter that ties the hands of our leaders in terms of putting creative solutions in place. That's still written the same way it was written when bankruptcy started. There's still a lot of work to do if this city is going to get where it needs to be.
And I think, Nancy, even following up to the point where that report came out this week and talking about that there has to be a trained workforce in this city for the city to thrive and go forward, and talking about tackling the IT and just some of those issues. And then they said selling City Airport might be one of those viable options as well.
One of Kevin Orr's priorities was to free up some money to invest in IT, which is a huge need. I would argue that the operational restructuring piece is equally as important as the financial restructuring, because if the city doesn't operate more efficiently, if it's not able to collect all of the revenues that it's owed, we know that we have a disgraceful property tax collection rate. If the city can't perform the services that residents need effectively in such a way that keeps people in the city, then we're right back here financially in just a few years, much quicker than anyone wants to think, unless that operational piece becomes efficient and functional. And that's something that's got to happen, and that's something that has started under Kevin Orr, but Mayor Duggan is really going to be the one who has to carry that forward after bankruptcy.
I was just going to say, so now the political will has to come from Mayor Mike Duggan and also the City Council. And in that report, it was addressed, saying, you know what, I think there is the proper leadership in place to make sure that that happens, because now that's the important piece.
Well, we hope so, because as I said, there's a big job left ahead, and if we come out of bankruptcy thinking that's it, that's all we need to do, we are going to be in trouble. Duggan will have a huge job coming out of this thing. Fortunately, he'll have a lot of the more resources because the bankruptcy will free up money for operating the city. Needs to invest a lot of that money into creating efficiencies, government efficiencies. He can't just spend it all, give it all out in contracts or all out in expanding the payroll. He's got to use some of that money to upgrade the city's infrastructure.
Nancy, I want to move forward and talk a little bit about the water situation in the city of Detroit, and the fact that the water department has been trying to crack down and collecting past money that it's owed. There was a moratorium they put now for 15 days that they're not going to be doing any more water shutoffs for people who are 60 days behind and owe over $150. Do you believe that situation has been, how do you believe, number one, I guess, how the situation has been handled, and do you believe that this 15-day hold was the way to go right now?
I think the situation's been handled terribly. The department has for decades created a reasonable belief in customers that if they don't pay their bill, that they're not going to lose their water. You've got a city with a 38% poverty rate. Folks are juggling bills. You pay the one they're going to shut off first. You hold off on the one you have some wiggle room to pay. And the department has taught customers that they're not going to lose their water. Then with very little warning, they move to this very aggressive shutoff policy. Yeah, people should pay what they owe. But if the goal is to get people current on their water bills and keep them current on their water bills, just starting to shut people off is not a really good plan. They should have launched a payment assistance program alongside, a well-publicized payment assistance program alongside shutoffs. They should have bought some bus wraps and some billboards and sent people to block club meetings and churches to say, pay your bill or lose your water. It's a pretty simple message that they didn't really communicate. If the goal is just to say, well, shut them off, then they've done that. But if the true goal is to get people current on their bills, they failed. And so stopping this shutoff program is a good thing. They need to really look at how this is playing out in the community before they resume.
Nolan, do you agree?
Yeah, I think they handled it just as badly as they could. There are assistance programs available, but you got to, I mean, you're dealing with a population that doesn't really know how to access that sort of information, isn't really good at helping themselves. And I think you could have gone into the neighborhoods and said, look, this is coming in a few weeks. Here are the steps you need to take before we get there. Now, some people are never going to do the things you need them to do, but I think they should have accompanied the shutoffs with a much greater information campaign and a lot more assistance to people on how to sign up for help. Now resuming these shutoffs, which they're going to have to do. You can't keep letting 50% of your customers not pay for water. Resuming it's going to be all that much harder.
Well, is 15 days enough, Nancy, to put the pause button on this?
I think 15 days is a start, and I think at the end of 15 days it's a lot easier to say, well, we're going to have to take another 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever than it is to start from nothing. I think this is a good start. I don't think they're going to be able to get done what they need to get done in 2 weeks. They're going to have to extend this period longer. A good place to start would be to look at folks who are getting utilities assistance from nonprofits for other utilities. Get a list of those folks, identify who is also delinquent on their water bill, reach out to those people. I mean, trying to pair people with resources, because the goal is to get people to pay their bills and to keep people connected to water and sewer. No one benefits when we cut people off en masse from water and sewer. This is not a good situation.
In fairness, this isn't as easy as it might be with some other utilities, because the water bills go out to addresses, not necessarily to individuals. And the transient population, you may have one person living in this address and then another address and another over the course of a 6 to 7 month period. You don't really know who's occupying that address. And in a lot of cases, they're going out there and finding, there's nobody there, and water services is continuing to an abandoned home or abandoned building. I talked to a guy the other day who sold his business or had his business foreclosed on, actually, and a neighbor called him and said, hey, the water's been running out the door for 3 months. And he went out there and the meter was off and just a steady stream of water running out the door. And that's happening all over the city.
Well, and that's another excellent point, is that water to abandoned houses, abandoned commercial buildings, all of that should be taken care of before families or individuals are aggressively targeted.